Okay, so this is the cylinder head off the 2010 Prius we've been working on. I'm gonna show you guys how to lap valves on this. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull the GR off and the exhaust manifold. That way I can lay it down on this piece of cardboard and we can get the valves out. Okay, now that you got all the exhaust manifold off and this can sit flat, what we're going to do is we're going to tilt this up and we're going to try to put a pile of rags right over the cylinder. So the cylinder head will be kind of popped up like that. And all that's doing is when we go to compress these springs down to get the keepers out, it'll keep the valve up in the head. These tools right here make this job a lot easier. You would use this one for installing. You can magnetize the keepers on here and then push down on the spring and then it'll set the keepers in the spot, and then when we're disassembling you can use this one. It'll push down and the keepers will pop up into this slot. So we'll go ahead and use this one to get these valves pulled out. So I'm just going to start on this side and just start taking all these springs off and just go all the way down, leave the valves in there, get the springs and keepers all off and set those aside, organized, and then I can pull each valve out and organize those, and then I'll start lapping the valves one by one. After you get all the springs and keepers off, it's good to line them up like this, just so you can make sure everything's organized. You didn't lose any of your keepers. So now what we're going to do is we're going to pull all these valves out, and then we'll just set them up in their corresponding part, and then we'll just start lapping after that. After you have the valves out, you'll want to look them over on the stem here and make sure there's no carbon buildup, because if you put new valve stem seals in, the carbon will just tear up those new valve stems. So if you do have a little bit of carbon, just wire wheel them or use a wire brush or something to just clean that little bit of carbon off. These ones all look like they're pretty good. Now, inspecting these valves, they should have, right here, they should have like a nice chrome looking ring all the way around. And these ones are all pitted and dark. So by lapping, you'll get that nice seat, like it'll be a ring, nice chrome ring around there. And then on down here in the valve seat, you'll get a nice ring here. And by doing that, lapping the valves, you know you get nice sealed tight, so you get good compression and no air leak by the valve when it's completely shut. So first, for lapping valves, you want to just go through and brake clean all the gunk off the valves, make sure they're clean of carbon buildup. If you want, you can wire wheel this little bit of carbon that's on the back here. And then we'll brake clean the cylinder head, all the ports out, clean that real good so there's no debris or oil in there. And then we can put the lapping compound on after it's all clean. Now that we got the valves clean and the cylinder head clean, what you're going to need is just some lapping compound and one of these suction cup lapping tools, and you're just going to put a tiny bit all the way around the face of this valve here, and then you'll slide it down in there, and then you'll put the suction cup piece on, and you'll just work it back and forth like that. Go up, work it back and forth, and after this valve will be married to this piece, so you want to make sure it stays here and doesn't get transferred around after you lap it in. Now that I have them lapped in, I like to number them just so they go back in the same spot. So this would be just number 1, 2, 3, and so on. Go down so when I go back together, I make sure I get the valve back where it's supposed to go. Now that we have these all lapped in, we'll pull them out and clean all the lapping compound off both sides, and then we can check our witness marks. So I'm going to go ahead and just pull each one of these out, clean them, and then we'll check, make sure the lapping job was decent, and if not, we'll have to go a second round on any of them that are not done right. Now we can just look over the valves and make sure they all have a nice ring all the way around that's clean on your intake and on the exhaust. After you check all your valves, check the seats, make sure they have a nice ring around them. If they have the nice ring, that means they're going to seal up tight. After that, now we can remove the valve stem seals and replace those. When replacing the valve stem seals, make note that the intake seals are the dark brown ones and the exhaust are the gray ones, because when you get them in the parts kit, they're not individually To get these off, you're just going to use a pair of pliers to pull them off, each one, and then we'll use like a socket with an extension and we can just tap the new ones on. To install the valve stem seals, all we're going to do is use this 10mm socket. If this barely goes over, catches on the edge there, and with an extension, then we'll just use a hammer to tap, and then they'll go right on. Now that the valve stems are all installed, we'll just put a good amount of oil on each one just to make sure the seals are easy and they don't tear when the valves come through. And then when we'll go ahead and install the valves, we'll just put a nice coat of oil all on this, on the stem, and just push them all in. We'll do all those, flip it over, and then we can start putting the springs and keepers back on. Now installing the valve springs is pretty much just reverse, so taking them out, you'll make sure you put your washer down first, then the spring, then the top retainer, and then the retainer clips. And you'll do that for all of them on both sides. And we'll be using this tool here, which I'll try to show you. This sometimes you'll kind of hold it on there with the magnet. So you'll set the keepers down inside this retainer and then just push down with that right in the center, and a lot of times it'll just go right on. Sometimes it takes a few minutes. Now that all the valve springs are installed, double check all your keepers, make sure they're seated all the way. And another thing I like to do is I'll tilt it up, and then I'll just take just a rubber mallet, and you'll just kind of give them a good tap to see if they're seated in. They don't pop off. got that all done and seated, I'm gonna put the exhaust manifold back on. So I'm gonna change out this rear donut gasket and then put the new one on and then remount the manifold. But I think I'm gonna leave the EGR pipe off when I install, and then I'll put the EGR pipe back on when it's in the car. Most of the time I just always have the EGR pipe on, but I wanna see if there's any difference to have it on or off. Now that's all back on there, it's pretty much ready to go back on the engine. I'm just going to do a little cleanup on this. I've already got where the front cover is, so I'll do a little more cleanup on that, and then over on the cylinder on the block I will clean up on that. So when this head goes on, pretty much it's just assemble everything. I don't have to stop and clean anything. Stay tuned for my next video of putting the cylinder head back on the vehicle. I'll be up shortly. Thanks for watching.